On April the 5th of 2024, 21-year-old Georgia Caldiera was at the Five Ways Hotel pub in Hull, Humberside, England. She was sitting at a table with her cousin when 30-year-old Kirsty Allen walked into the establishment. Caldiera's back was turned to Allen when, without warning or provocation, she struck her on the side of the face with a claw hammer. Allen shouted, "I will do you in! I will kill you!" and swung the hammer 2 more times before Caldiera's cousin restrained her. Allen was also left bleeding as she accidentally struck herself with the claw end on the back of the head. Her injuries, however, were far less severe than those of her victim. Caldiera suffered swelling, a depressed fracture to her cheekbone, and a 1/2 inch cut. Caldiera recovered and was left with a scar to her forehead. Allen was said to have been boiling with rage after Caldiera had slept with her boyfriend, Lennox Green, and was taunting her about the tryst on social media. One of Caldiera's messages to her love rival reportedly read, "I effed your bloke." At the time of discovering the affair, Allen was pregnant with Green's child. Aside from rage over the infidelity, Allen was also reportedly concerned that she contracted an STD passed on by Green from Caldiera. The latter reported that the attack was completely out of the blue and that it completely blindsided her. She struggled with lingering psychological implications, telling the court, "I am normally chatty and outgoing, but now I am constantly subdued. I worry about the emotional distress I am causing my family and friends." Allen, who had 11 past convictions, including for assault as a youth, admitted assaulting Caldiera, causing actual bodily harm as well as offenses of affray and possessing a hammer as an offensive weapon. In February of 2025, she was jailed for 18 months. Number 10. Nick Weir. 28-year-old British man Nick Weir got into an argument with security staff at the 91 Karaoke Bar in Bangkok, Thailand, in the early hours of March the 24th of 2025. He was reportedly turned away from the bar, but the circumstances of his interaction with the bouncers were still subject to an investigation, according to the latest information available. CCTV caught Weir running down the street cursing and screaming, "What are you going to do?" 2 club bouncers named as Bunchu and Furinat pursued the man on a motorbike. A confrontation ensued in the street after they pulled over near Weir. Shortly thereafter, the tourist and the bouncers brawled, with the melee captured on CCTV. Bunchu and Furinat took Weir down and held him in a restraining position while a bystander called the police. At some point, the British man became ill and lost consciousness. Paramedics arrived at the scene, but they were unable to revive him. Bunchu and Furinat stayed behind to give their accounts of the incident. In his police interview, the latter said that he'd asked Weir, "Is there anything I can help you with?" shortly after getting off the motorbike. Weir then jumped on the bike, which resulted in Bunchu pushing him away. The bouncer pulled out his phone and held it out to Weir, reportedly in an attempt to translate. The British man unsuccessfully tried to grab the device before he ran into the road and again attempted to get on the motorbike. The bouncers pulled him off, leading to the grapple exchange that ultimately resulted in Weir being brought to the ground. As reported by local law enforcement, Furinat climbed up and sat on the man from the waist down, leaning forward. Bunchu was reported to have locked his arms and pressed his head down on his torso, causing the torso to lie sideways until the foreigner became still. It remained unclear if the pressure applied during the immobilization had led to Weir's death. As of the latest updates on the matter, investigators were waiting for forensic results to establish the degree of the bouncer's culpability and blood tests to determine if Weir was under the influence of drugs or alcohol at the time of the incident. Based on footage leading up to the brawl, he didn't show visible signs of intoxication as he was running in a straight line and didn't appear to stumble. Number 9. Johnathan McConnell and Aaron Harris. A hit and run on the 210 freeway in California escalated to a road rage incident that culminated in the death of 2 men in their late 30s on July the 27th of 2024. Johnathan McConnell was riding a motorcycle and weaving in and out of lanes when he clipped a sedan driven by Aaron Harris. McConnell rode off, but Harris, who had his 2 young children in the vehicle, followed him to the parking lot of Joy's Bar and Lounge on Baseline Street in Highland. Harris stopped his vehicle and began shouting threats at the other man, who'd gotten off the motorcycle to meet some friends. When McConnell approached him, Harris brandished a gun and opened fire. McConnell, who was also armed, returned fire. San Bernardino County deputies found the men in critical condition after they'd both been hit during the gunfight. They were rushed to a local hospital where they were pronounced dead. Harris's children witnessed the incident but weren't hurt. A third person at the scene was shot in the hand, but their injuries weren't deemed life-threatening. Number 8. Kevon Johnson. On March the 17th of 2024, New York City man Carlisle Thompson got into an argument with a tow truck driver at a Shell gas station at 1143 Clarkson Avenue in Brownsville, Brooklyn. Those running the Shell branch had an arrangement with the neighborhood's residents in which they would pay $10 to park their vehicles overnight on the station's grounds if they couldn't find space on their street. 61-year-old Thomas, a former horse jockey who worked at the Aqueduct racetrack in Queens, lived next door to the station. He reportedly had a particular relationship with the shop wherein he sometimes wouldn't pay the $10 until after he got his vehicle. On the evening of March the 17th, someone phoned Thomas to warn him that the Shell manager had called a tow truck to impound his car. Thomas went to the gas station to investigate. Surveillance footage obtained by WABC TV showed Thomas trying to stop the tow truck by opening its driver's side door. He confronted the driver, 30-year-old Kevon Johnson, and the argument turned physical. Johnson threw a single punch to the man's head, but the strike had devastating consequences when Thomas collapsed onto the pavement and hit his head. He died on the spot. His stepdaughter later told a media outlet why he got to die over $10. He's a little man. You gotta punch him like that? You gotta kill him over $10? Thomas's death was classified as a homicide, but due to a legal loophole, Johnson was only charged with third-degree assault. Moreover, the misdemeanor charge hadn't been bail eligible since statewide reforms dating back to 2020, so Johnson was released with virtually no impediment. Explaining the man's low-level charge, a law enforcement source told the New York Post that one-punch homicides weren't often prosecuted with murder or manslaughter charges. The source was quoted as saying the law allows only for charges relating to the punch, and there is no way to prove intent to cause his death or any other serious injury. Number 7. Ahmad Mossad. On March the 16th of 2025, a food cart operator and a nightclub promoter got into an argument outside the Nebula nightclub on West 41st Street near Broadway, New York City. 45-year-old Mark White and the worker, who was identified as Ahmad Mossad, had interacted on 2 previous occasions as the cart was stationed outside Nebula. It remains unclear if their previous encounters had been acrimonious, but on March the 16th, they argued for about 15 minutes, after which White went inside the club. When the promoter emerged, Mossad grabbed something off the food car and used it as an accelerant to set the man ablaze. White ran for roughly 100 feet while engulfed in flames before a Good Samaritan rushed to his aid and used a fire extinguisher to put him out. First responders arrived at the scene and footage showed White shirtless, covered in burns and in obvious agony as he was taken into the care of the FDNY. The man was stabilized after receiving treatment at New York Presbyterian Cornell Hospital. Mossad fled the scene of the arson attack in the immediate aftermath and got on a plane to Egypt later that same day. It wasn't clear, according to the latest updates, if the authorities were tracking him to the country. Number 6. Sincere Jazmin. On March the 26th of 2025, teenager Sincere Jazmin walked to the CY Deli grocery in Jamaica, Queens, New York City. The backpack-wearing high school student was recorded by surveillance cameras as he sat down in the doorway, clutching his chest in pain. According to the deli workers, Jazmin didn't answer when they asked what happened. He twice tried to get up but collapsed each time, and a delivery man called 911. By the time that first responders arrived at the scene, Jazmin was unconscious. Paramedics found that the boy had been shot, and he was rushed to Jamaica Hospital Medical Center but couldn't be saved. The shooting allegedly stemmed from an ongoing dispute and an earlier confrontation at John Adams High School in Flushing. Jazmin's killer waited to ambush him as he got off a bus on Liberty Avenue near 172nd Street. At around 2:40 p.m., Jazmin was shot in the chest after a short CCTV-captured dispute and then made his way across the street to the deli. The suspect, who wasn't immediately identified, was described as having a slim build and a dark complexion and was last spotted wearing a green hooded sweatshirt, grey sweatpants, and multicolored sneakers. Jazmin's father, Terrell Canston, was pictured wiping away tears as he went to the deli in the aftermath of his son's murder. Canston told a media outlet regarding the suspect, "They're gonna reap what they sow, you know. I want justice." Number 5. Jasan Givens. 2 men were involved in a road rage incident in the area of the Los Angeles International Airport on the morning of May the 31st of 2024. The specifics of the confrontation remained unclear, but CCTV showed one of the men, 38-year-old Jasan Givens, chasing after the other, who was shirtless. The pursuit moved from the sidewalk onto the street. Givens tackled the other man from behind, but in doing so, slammed his shoulder into the face of an innocent bystander, an elderly woman who was checking her bags. She was knocked down and then out cold after falling face first into the asphalt. The men continued to wrestle on the ground, completely ignoring her. At one point, Givens planted his foot onto the unconscious woman's head and pushed off it to get on top of the other man. Both men fled the scene, As Good Samaritans began rendering aid to the elderly victim, she was taken to the hospital in critical condition but was subsequently stabilized, and by mid-June she was released. Givens and the other man were apprehended in the aftermath and each faced a charge of felony battery. Number 4. Ebonnie Reid. In June of 2019, Australian woman Ebonnie Reid was on a night out with her boyfriend at the wharf on Queensland's Sunshine Coast. As they were out in the street, the boyfriend approached a woman who was waiting for an Uber with her mother and housemate. He asked to borrow the woman's phone so that he could call a taxi. As captured on surveillance footage, Reid, who was clad in a white dress, waited nearby with her arms crossed, seemingly annoyed. She then walked away, and upon returning aggressively approached the other woman and pushed her from behind into the street. Her boyfriend intervened, placed Reid in a bear hug and walked her back. In the moments that followed, he pushed her, which prompted another man who was sitting in an outdoor seating area to jump to her defense. The two men shoved each other, but the situation appeared to resolve itself as Reid's boyfriend kissed her before walking away. Seconds later, Reid took a running charge at the same woman whom she'd previously shoved. She punched her in the face, and the fight moved into the street, with the women narrowly avoiding being hit by a passing car. They pulled on each other's hair before Reid took the victim down, where she scratched and punched her, briefly knocking her out. Reid wrapped her legs around the victim's head but was ultimately pulled away. It took the combined effort of 5 people to keep the women separated. Once they both rose to their feet, Reid, who was intoxicated at the time, remained aggressive and tried to get at the other woman but eventually retreated at a hurried pace, and no further violence occurred. She was arrested in the incident's wake. The attack at the wharf marked Reid's second drunken and jealousy-related altercation in the course of as many months. The 23-year-old was reported to have previously fought a woman who'd danced with her boyfriend. In her police interview, Reid described the latest attack as a push and shove, claiming that she believed the woman had made an offensive comment to her partner. Reid cried at Maroochydore Magistrates Court in mid-January of 2020 as she pleaded guilty to assault. Number 3. Gilbert Augustin. 66-year-old Sikh man Jazmin Singh was driving home from a doctor's appointment in Kew Gardens, Queens, New York City on October the 19th of 2023 when he was involved in a fender bender. His Toyota collided with a Ford Mustang driven by 30-year-old Gilbert Augustin. The latter got out of his car and approached Singh's vehicle. Augustin repeatedly told him no police while calling him offensive epithets such as Turban Man. The younger man also said that he wouldn't allow Singh to go home, and at one point during the row reached into his car and grabbed his phone. Augustin was clutching both his phone and Singh's when the latter exited the Toyota and followed him. The argument escalated, but Singh was able to snatch back his device. As he was returning to his car, Augustin punched him 3 times in the head and face, with one blow knocking off his turban. Singh dropped to the ground and the back of his head hit the pavement, causing a critical brain injury. He was rushed to Jamaica Hospital Medical Center, where he passed away the following day. Recounting Singh's injuries, his son, Multani, told WCBS that he was left with a broken skull and was missing 2 front teeth as a result of the broad daylight attack. Multani said of the attacker, "The guy was addressing my father with his costumes, with his turbans. There was no reason for someone to go in that intensity." Augustin was arrested later on the day of the attack. His subsequent indictment listed 20 counts, which included manslaughter and assault as hate crimes, fleeing the scene, and driving with a suspended license. NYC Mayor Eric Adams expressed his condolences on X and wrote, "Jazmin Singh loved his city and deserved so much more than his tragic death." Singh's wife, Jazmin Kaur, was in the passenger seat of the Toyota when the attack unfolded. The couple were days away from traveling back to their hometown in Hoshiarpur, India, where they planned to spend the winter. Number 2. Dean Cameron. In September of 2024, British man Dean Cameron was given a custodial sentence for viciously attacking his former partner, 40-year-old Susie Harburn, on multiple occasions. The couple had met on Facebook and were together for over 3 years. The woman recalled that red flags appeared within the first months of them dating, as Cameron began exhibiting controlling behavior. He went through her phone, had a problem with her going anywhere without him, and wouldn't let her have a drink at home if she was alone. The man would reportedly go from 0 to 60 in seconds when something annoyed him. On the morning of August the 7th of 2021, the couple were in bed when Harburn questioned her partner about the manner in which he'd spoken to her during a previous incident. Cameron flew into a fit of rage, grabbed her by the throat, strangled her, and slammed her head into the bed frame 3 times. The single mother screamed for help, and her teenage son, Jamie, found her injured on the bedroom floor. Harburn suffered a black eye, bruises and cuts. Cameron apologized profusely for the incident, promised to change, and the woman ultimately decided to give him another chance. By November of 2022, they were planning their upcoming wedding over a weekend at Harburn's Middlebeck home. Cameron, who had 4 cans of San Miguel, started acting strange. He questioned his partner over a golf ball found in her car and a pair of blue socks, which didn't belong to him, that she'd pulled out of the washing machine. Cameron accused Harburn of cheating on him and exploded when she denied it. They argued, and he punched her in the face with such force that her front teeth went through her lips, causing cuts and bleeding. Harburn would need 6 stitches, and she struggled to eat and speak for weeks in the aftermath. Cameron also strangled her and threw her into the bottom stairs and a door frame at the home. A neighbor heard the commotion, and they called the emergency services, whereupon Cameron was arrested. Harburn had never cheated on him. The blue socks had been borrowed by her son from a family friend, while the golf ball was found by Harburn around the neighborhood, and she took it with the intention of giving it to her father, who enjoyed golf. Cameron admitted 2 counts of assault, occasioning actual bodily harm, at Teesside Crown Court. In September of 2024, he was jailed for 28 months and was also given a restraining order barring him from contacting Harburn for 3 years. Stick around after number 1 if you'd still like to watch our release about when tools go wrong. That one includes some pretty crazy people as well. Number 1. Joe Corden, Kyle Worthington, and Jack Spackman. On March the 21st of 2023, a Vauxhall Corsa and a garbage truck were involved in a near miss in the area of Birch's Head in Stoke-on-Trent, England. In the moments that followed, as captured by the waste vehicle's surveillance cameras, a man jumped out of the Corsa. The suspect, later identified as Joe Corden, climbed onto the side of the cab and started raining down blows on the driver. 3 of the latter's reflective clothing-clad colleagues emerged and a fight ensued. Blows were exchanged during the skirmish, and at one point Corden pushed one of the workers over a garden wall. The men were ultimately able to retreat into the cab, but as the truck started driving away, Corden pulled out a lollipop sign from the trunk of his car and smashed it against the side of the vehicle. The man, who was reportedly high on codeine at the time, went on to assemble a crew consisting of Kyle Worthington, Jack Spackman, and an unnamed youth. The men armed themselves with weapons that included an axe, a sledgehammer, a machete, and a gun. Roughly half an hour after the first incident, they ambushed a second waste unit on the street. 2 workers were wheeling bins when the assailants ran towards them. One man climbed back in the truck, but his colleague was unable to escape in time and was set upon by the thugs. As Corden used an axe to smash the truck's windows, one of his balaclava-wearing accomplices charged the worker and delivered a running blow with a retractable baton. The victim fell onto the bin, and the man continued striking him. Corden joined in the fray and landed multiple axe strikes on the worker, who eventually staggered out of the surveillance camera's view. Before the thugs retreated, they aimed a few more sledgehammer and axe blows at the crew and vehicle. One of the victims, a man in his 50s, was taken to the hospital with head and facial injuries. He recovered, but he and 2 of his colleagues retired in light of the brutal attack. One victim impact statement from a worker who had the gun pulled on him read, "I have since struggled with everyday tasks. I suffer with flashbacks and nightmares, and I'm constantly looking over my shoulder." By February of 2025, Corden, Worthington, and Spackman pleaded guilty to charges that between them included assault occasioning bodily harm, conspiracy to commit grievous bodily harm with intent, possession of an offensive weapon in a public place, damaging property, and possessing a firearm with intent to cause fear of violence. They had yet to be sentenced as of the latest updates on the case, while the teen who was involved in the attack was given a 3-year youth rehabilitation order. On March the 6th of 2022, law enforcement in Harvard, Illinois began pursuing a Chevrolet Trax driven by 19-year-old Zoraida Espino, who was going 30 miles per hour over the speed limit while traveling through a residential area. The teen was known to local police from previous interactions. The vehicle was eventually stopped, and as indicated by body cam footage, officers were exceedingly accommodating towards the teenager throughout their exchanges. That attitude, however, wasn't reciprocated by Zoraida. She claimed that she hadn't stopped her vehicle when signaled to do so because she was trying to get to her best friend's house. She then changed her story and said that she had a doctor's appointment in Whitewater. Officers ultimately decided to arrest her. When a cop told Espino that he'd be taking her in, the young woman replied, "No, I'm not under arrest," and refused to get out of her car. In spite of her blatant opposition to their orders, the cops displayed great patience in repeatedly asking her to step out, assuring her that she'd be released after processing at the station. A man who was with Espino, only identified as Jasan, cooperated with law enforcement and exited the vehicle, but Espino didn't, even after being told that she would be forcibly removed and charged with resisting an officer. At some point, the teen pulled out a multitude of phone charger cables, clutched them closely, and claimed that she wasn't going to leave because she was cold and had already arrived at her friend's house. Espino then started screaming when officers tried to remove her. She continued struggling, yelling, and crying as law enforcement handcuffed her and carried her to their cruiser. Afterwards, they took another look at Espino's car and discovered tufts
from an animal's fur caught in her headlight, with Jasan telling them she'd hit a deer the night before. Espino, who looked distraught and disheveled in her booking photo, was charged with 2 counts of resisting a peace officer, speeding, fleeing, and attempting to elude a peace officer, 2 counts of improper turn signal, disregarding a stop sign, and operating an uninsured motor vehicle. Number 7. Matthew Timothy Wetherington. In the early morning hours of July the 6th of 2019, fire emergency services were called to the Welcome Inn RV Park in West Port Angeles, Washington. A blaze had destroyed 2 trailers and multiple vehicles. Witnesses reported hearing a loud boom and then seeing 34-year-old Matthew Timothy Wetherington, who lived in the area, running away from the scene. After the fire was put out, inside the charred remains of one of the trailers, firefighters found 4 bodies, subsequently identified as Valerie Cambites and her children Lily, Emma, and Jaden. The crime scene was processed by investigators from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives, as well as the FBI and several local agencies. A lack of soot in their airways indicated that the victims had been killed prior to being set on fire. An autopsy confirmed that they'd succumbed to blunt or sharp force trauma to the head and spine. Wetherington was found camping at a nearby park on the evening of the blaze and taken into custody. During his arrest, Wetherington reportedly told officers, "I don't understand how I could do something like this, and I deserve to be locked up. That's all I've got to say." Valerie was his wife, but it remained unclear why he'd killed her and her loved ones. The murders were, however, premeditated, as an entry in Wetherington's journal made several hours before the fire was reported read that preparations are nearly complete, just need to last another 11 hours before it really begins. Entries reportedly made after the murders indicated that the man's motivation was a mystery to himself as well, since he recalled Valerie asking him what he was doing, to which he added, "Indeed, why did I do it? Why indeed?" After killing the Cambiite's family, he started the fire as an attempt to cover his tracks. Hydrocarbon, a byproduct of burned liquid petrochemicals, was detected in the master bedroom where the victims were found, and Wetherington had traces of gasoline on his shoes and socks. He also had singed hair, eyelashes, and arms, in addition to smelling like smoke and displaying burn holes in his back and shoulders. In late 2020, Wetherington, who pleaded guilty to the massacre, was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Number 6. Orion Jones. In late January of 2015, waitress Tia Cruz was talking to a customer at Rick's Bar in Key West, Florida, when she reportedly began feeling something wet on her body. Cruz initially believed it was rainwater, but a co-worker soon pointed out that a man was relieving himself on her from an above balcony. The man in question, who was subsequently identified as 20-year-old Orion Jones, was chased through the bar by security staff. One bouncer was reported to have restrained the man outside, while another contacted law enforcement. The man aggressively resisted arrest and was consequently shot with a taser. Jones was taken into custody on charges of disorderly intoxication, resisting arrest, and underage drinking. He had past offenses that included marijuana possession, burglary, and trespassing. Number 5. Jason Bradley Beanie. On April the 28th of 2023, officers from the Purcell Police Department in Oklahoma were called to a domestic disturbance at the Mantooth Mobile Homes Park. The caller was identified as Jason Bradley Beanie. He claimed that he'd attacked his wife and that she was lying on the floor and bleeding. Law enforcement went to the address and located the man outside the residence. Officers found the unnamed woman at the rear of the master bedroom and controlled her bleeding until paramedics arrived at the scene. A bloody hammer was discovered on a coffee table in the living room. The police determined that Beanie had struck his wife in the head with the tool. His reason for doing so wasn't made immediately available to the public. The victim was taken to a hospital while Beanie was arrested for domestic assault and battery with great bodily injury. Number 4. Kimberly Zimmerman. Officers from the Morrisville Borough Police Department in Pennsylvania responded to a call about a motorhome on fire in December of 2019. Upon arriving at the scene, the police learned that 32-year-old Kimberly Zimmerman had arrived in the area in a black Chevrolet, entered the home, and then left right before it caught fire. In the incident's wake, Zimmerman was captured on surveillance cameras wearing a sweatshirt that had the words "Act Crazy" emblazoned on the front. The woman was arrested on 2 counts of arson and 1 count of criminal mischief. She was taken to the E-Bucks County Prison and held in lieu of securing 10% of a $75,000 bond. Number 3. Alan Bailey. In August of 2011, English welder Alan Bailey was operating an angle grinder at Pressvest Limited in West Midlands. The machine was reported to have kicked back against a piece of steel, cut through the protective gear that Bailey was wearing, and inflicted a 12-inch wound in his neck area. The worker later claimed that he was shell-shocked in the immediate aftermath, and he applied pressure to his neck to stop the bleeding. He was rushed to Russell's Hall Hospital, where doctors determined that he'd been millimeters from dying, as the slash had opened up his neck in extremely close proximity to major arteries and veins. Bailey, who was at the time in his mid-40s, had his wound mended with 17 staples and was cared for by his wife and their 3 sons during a 9-week recovery period. The man later revealed that he suffered psychological issues as a result of the injury. Updates from 2014 indicated that the company for which Bailey had worked admitted liability in the incident, and the worker was given a 5-figure settlement. Number 2. David Perry. On March the 19th of 2022, gardener David Perry became aggressive towards a family group as they were joking and laughing at the Bell Hotel in Clare, Suffolk, England. The inebriated Perry was consequently ejected from the village pub. Surveillance cameras captured the man, who was at the time in his late 30s, returning and storming into the establishment with an axe in hand. Footage showed Perry raising the axe above his head with both hands and then forcefully striking 37-year-old Matthew Cutts square in the head. The victim recovered following emergency surgery at Addenbrooke's Hospital in Cambridge. However, months after the attack, he still struggled with confusion that prevented him from driving or doing activities he'd previously enjoyed, such as golfing, fishing, or going to the gym. Cutts was deemed fortunate that the axe head had landed on a thicker portion of his skull, as he was less than half an inch from suffering permanent damage or even death. Perry was found guilty of attempted murder in the spring of 2023, for which he was given a 24-year sentence, in addition to an 18-month sentence for possession of a weapon, with the sentences to be served concurrently. Number 1. Kylie Watts. Los Angeles woman Kylie Watts was walking through North Hollywood on October the 10th of 2022 when she passed by 30-year-old homeless man Johnathan Cole. A video captured by surveillance cameras from across the street showed Cole as he turned towards the woman and, without warning or provocation, stabbed her in the head with a pair of scissors. The 4-inch blades remained embedded into the back of Watts' skull. She staggered to a nearby restaurant and called 911 before FaceTiming her mother, with her first words reportedly being, "Mom, this is serious, I've been stabbed." The medical staff at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center removed the scissors from her head but left the bone fragment in place due to its dangerous proximity to a major blood vessel. 24-year-old Watts was expected to recover from her brain injury. In the incident's wake, in another unprovoked attack, Cole threw a jar of pickles at a woman at a bus stop, striking her in the shoulder. He was chased away by a man who'd witnessed his violent outburst and then restrained by the security staff at a local supermarket until the LAPD arrived at the scene. Cole was subsequently arrested on suspicion of attempted murder.
Thanks for watching. Would you rather stick your hand in boiling water for 5 seconds or be permanently kicked off of YouTube? Let us know in the comments section below.